You'd be surprised how betrayal doesn't feel like a slap. It's more like the sound of a door slowly closing, the one you didn't know you left open behind you. My name's Mark Lawson. I used to think I was a simple man, predictable in a good way. Married to someone I thought was my best friend. I had a younger brother, Jason, who I practically raised after our dad walked out and our mom fell apart. I gave him a place to live when he had nowhere to go, found him a job at my company, and when I got married, he stood right next to me as my best man. The irony still stings, best man. People always say family comes first. But I've learned that's not always the case. Sometimes blood just makes the knife cut deeper. It started with whispers. Not from anyone else, just that internal voice that kicks in when something feels off. My wife, Emma, had started acting differently. She was distant but overly kind, if that makes sense. The kind of sweet that tastes like it's hiding something sour underneath. She'd smile at me, touch my arm like everything was fine, but her eyes were somewhere else. And Jason? He was suddenly around more than usual. Helping out. Dropping by unannounced. Laughing too loud at Emma's jokes. I'm not a paranoid guy. I don't check phones. I don't snoop. But I notice patterns. I'm an architect, details are kind of my thing. And the details weren't adding up. I remember the night it all came to a head like it was yesterday. I'd worked late on a house project, poring over blueprints and timelines, and I came home to silence. The kind that feels too quiet. Emma said she had gone to visit her sister. Jason had told me earlier he was going out with some friends. I didn't even connect the dots until I saw it, one of those random, stupid details that never gets erased from your head. A wine glass. 2 of them. Lipstick on one. A smudge of beer on the other. And Jason's hoodie on the back of the kitchen chair. Maybe it could have been nothing. Maybe I could have convinced myself I was seeing ghosts. But I didn't. I didn't ask. I didn't accuse. I just sat down on the couch and stared at nothing for an hour. That's when I realized something most people don't until it's too late. Some betrayals don't need words. You can feel them in the quiet. Emma came home that night, humming. She kissed me on the forehead. I didn't flinch. I just nodded. Jason texted me the next morning like nothing happened. I replied with a thumbs up. And that was the last conversation I ever had with either of them. I packed a bag the following weekend. No dramatic exit. No final speech. Just a note, you made your choice. I'm making mine. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want explanations. I just wanted peace. So I disappeared. It's funny, people think silence is weak. That walking away is surrender. But I'll tell you what, leaving without looking back is one of the hardest, most powerful things you'll ever do. Especially when it's from the people who knew how to love you and hurt you best. I started over in a different city. Took a job designing municipal buildings, nothing flashy, but solid work. I rented a small place, started biking again, and eventually adopted a dog. A big old shepherd named Duke who had a limp and a grumble like an old man, kind of like me. I kept my circle small. Talked to my mom occasionally. Told her Jason and I had just drifted. She didn't ask questions. I think she always knew he had a streak of selfishness. She just never wanted to see it. Years passed. I healed in layers. Not perfectly, but enough. Enough to laugh again. Enough to sleep. Enough to let go. And then, one rainy Thursday afternoon, my phone rang. The name on the screen stopped me cold. Jason. I didn't answer it the first time. Or the second. But on the third ring, something in me shifted. I picked up. His voice was thin. Slurred. Hello. Mark, he said, I'm sorry. I messed everything up. I'm in trouble. I need you. And just like that, the door I thought I'd locked forever creaked open again. When I picked up that phone, I didn't think I was opening a door. I thought I was cracking a window just enough to peek through and shut it again. But grief has a strange way of crawling back in, especially when it sounds like your brother crying on the other end of the line. Mark, Jason said again, I need help. Please. It's weird. In that moment, I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. Just tired. The kind of tired that comes from holding something heavy for too long, even when you've convinced yourself you set it down years ago. What's going on? I asked, voice flat. He hesitated. Then coughed. It didn't sound like a smoker's cough or a cold. It sounded like something deeper. Ragged. Wet. He cleared his throat. I've got liver failure, he said. Stage 4. They're saying maybe 6 months. Maybe less. I didn't say anything. I didn't know who else to call. There it was. The sentence that broke me. Not because it was touching. Because it was true. He had no one else. No friends. No family. Not even Emma. She left him after a year, I'd heard through the grapevine. Why me? I asked. Silence. Then, the smallest voice I'd ever heard from him, because you're the only one who ever really gave a damn. That one hit. He went on to tell me he was in a public hospital in Austin, no insurance, no place to go after discharge, and he'd burned every bridge he had with gasoline and a grin as usual. I'm scared, Mark. I know I don't deserve it, but I don't want to die alone. And here's where I admit something I don't love about myself. I didn't hang up. I didn't scream at him or remind him what he did. I just sat there, phone to my ear, staring out the window while Duke rested his head on my foot. I told him I'd call the hospital and see what I could do. He cried. Said thank you. I hung up before I could say anything else. I stood there for a while after. Just stood there. My dog looked up like he was waiting for me to say something profound. I didn't have anything. Instead, I poured a glass of water and sat at the kitchen table, staring at my reflection in the window. I looked older. Not just aged, something else. Like a guy who knew too much and still didn't know what to do with it. The hospital confirmed everything. Jason Lawson. 42. Admitted 3 days ago. No next of kin listed. No insurance. Cirrhosis caused by years of heavy drinking, likely untreated hepatitis 2. His liver was shot and the transplant list wasn't looking good. The nurse paused when I said my name. You're his brother? She asked. Was, I replied. But yes. There was a quiet kind of sympathy in her voice. He's in bad shape. I think he's holding on because he's hoping someone still cares. Funny thing is, I didn't know if I did. But that didn't stop me from driving 3 hours the next morning to go see him. The hospital was the kind of place that smelled like bleach, disappointment, and old coffee. The walls were beige. The chairs were cracked. And every clock ticked too loud. I found him in a shared room behind a blue curtain. He looked smaller, pale, yellowed skin, hair thinner than I remembered, tubes in his arms, machines chirping around him like tired birds. When he saw me, his eyes widened, a flicker of the kid I once protected, once laughed with, once trusted. The kid who looked up to me like I had the answers. The same one who took everything from me in one selfish swipe. Hey, he said, his voice gravel. I nodded. Hey. He reached out a trembling hand. I didn't take it. We sat in silence for a while. He tried to make small talk, asked how I was, how work was, if I ever saw Emma again. I gave short answers. No details. No warmth. Eventually, he got quiet. I know I don't have a right to ask you for anything, he said. But if there's any part of you that still remembers when we were kids, before all the mess. He didn't finish. Just let the words fall away. I watched him, this broken version of the brother I once loved, and I realized something. This wasn't about forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever. It was about me. Who I wanted to be at the end of all this. The kind of man who lets hate eat him alive, or the kind who can stand in the ruins of what used to be family and still choose decency. I didn't say anything right then. I just stood up, told him I'd think about what to do next, and walked out of the room. As I passed the nurse's station, she gave me that same gentle look. You okay? She asked. I gave a half smile. Not even close. But I'm here. That night, I sat in a cheap motel room with a TV that only got 3 channels and a buzzing fridge. I thought about my brother, my ex-wife, my old life, and the future I never planned for. And I realized this wasn't the end of the story. Not yet. It was the beginning of something I hadn't figured out how to name. I didn't sleep much that night. You'd think after years of silence and distance, hearing that Jason was dying would bring me some kind of relief, like karma finally punched his ticket. But instead, all I felt was hollow. Like I just opened a letter with no words inside. In the motel mirror, I looked like a man who hadn't forgiven, but wasn't angry either. Just stuck somewhere in between. I packed my things before sunrise. Drove to the nearest diner because I needed coffee that didn't taste like plastic and maybe a little clarity. The waitress was kind enough to keep my cup full and my questions unanswered. I kept thinking about that last year before everything fell apart. Before the wedding toast that Jason gave where he called me the most loyal man he knew. Before Emma slipped from my wife to his secret. And here I was, years later, the only one he had left. Back at the hospital, I found Jason asleep. He looked worse. Eyes sunken, cheeks hollow. His breath was shallow, the kind of breath you don't trust. I sat down anyway. Watched the heart monitor beep steady and slow. An older doctor came in about half an hour later, clipboard in hand. He didn't ask many questions, just confirmed I was Jason's brother, then sat down with the kind of calm that usually precedes bad news. He doesn't have long, the doctor said. His liver's failing faster than we anticipated. He's on the transplant list, but without a living donor or some kind of miracle, it won't matter. I nodded, bracing myself for what I knew was coming. Mr. Lawson, are you a match? The words hit like a bag of bricks. I looked at the man like he'd just asked me to donate a kidney to the devil himself. I don't know, I said slowly. We're full brothers, so maybe. But I haven't done any tests. If you're open to testing, I can get it started today. He doesn't have a lot of time. The doctor left me alone to think. And there it was, the crossroads. You see, everyone loves a redemption story. Everyone wants the tale where the hero forgives, gives the gift of life, and walks away a better man. But life ain't a movie, and sometimes the script stinks. I looked at Jason, unconscious and quiet for once in his life. And I asked myself, plain and simple, do I let him die? It wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about dignity. Mine. Could I live with myself knowing I stood by and watched him fade away? The thing is, I didn't know. So I got up and went outside. Stood in the parking lot, leaned on my car, and watched the sun struggle to rise behind a curtain of gray clouds. That's when my phone buzzed. It was a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I picked up. Mark. Her voice. Emma. I hadn't heard it in years. It used to be my favorite sound. Now it felt like biting down on tinfoil. How did you get my number? Jason gave it to me, she said. He told me he called you. Of course he did, I muttered. I'm sorry, she said. I shouldn't have I cut in. Don't apologize now. It's been years. I know. But I heard what's happening. And he's not going to make it. What do you want from me, Emma? I just wanted to say thank you. For going to see him. He doesn't deserve it. But I knew you'd go. I stayed silent. She sighed. He always said you were the better man. I laughed just once. Bitter and flat. He said that while sneaking around with my wife? I wasn't the woman I should have been, she said. I've spent a long time learning how much damage I caused. A long pause. I'm not calling to ask you to forgive him, she said. I'm calling to tell you, if you walk away, I wouldn't blame you. And with that, she hung up. I stood there for a while, phone in hand, heart somewhere in my shoes. Then I walked back into the hospital. I found the doctor and said 2 words I never thought I'd say again. I'll test. He nodded, expression unreadable, and got the paperwork going. Back in Jason's room, I pulled the chair close and finally spoke. You're lucky I'm not a colder man. His eyes fluttered open barely. Mark, he whispered. Yeah, I said. It's me. And I haven't decided yet. Decided? What? If I'm going to save your life. He looked like he wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. I'm sorry, he whispered again. Yeah, I said, leaning back. Me too. They took my blood at 8:17 a.m. I watched the nurse label the vial, Lawson, Mark, and seal it like it meant something. Like the small glass tube might decide if a man who once took everything from me gets another shot at life. The nurse didn't ask why I was getting tested. She just did her job with the kind of quiet you find in graveyards and oncology wards. Respectful, practiced. She'd probably seen 100 brothers in this chair before me, none with a story like mine, but all with that same vacant stare. The results would take a day or 2. Maybe longer. In the meantime, I was stuck in this strange holding pattern, half in the past, half in something I didn't want to name. Jason was fading fast. Every time I walked into that room, he looked more like a shell. Less color. Less weight. More silence. The man who once bragged louder than anyone I knew could barely lift his head to meet my eyes now. We didn't talk much, but when we did, it was awkward. Like 2 strangers pretending they remembered what brotherhood was supposed to sound like. On day 2, he finally broke. Why are you here? He whispered. I looked up from the chair, where I was quietly reading a book I hadn't turned a page in for 20 minutes. I don't know, I said. He gave a weak smile. You always were a terrible liar. I sighed. I guess part of me still remembers the kid who used to follow me around with a football and 2 left feet. Until I broke Mom's vase, he said, trying to chuckle, but it came out as a cough. And blamed it on me, I added. Jason looked down. Seems like I never stopped. We sat with that for a minute. A full, suffocating minute. I didn't just lose a brother back then, I said quietly. I lost my home. My marriage. My trust in anything that felt safe. I know. Then why? I asked. Why did you do it? He didn't answer right away. He just stared at the 4 in his arm like it held the answer. I was jealous, he said. Of you. Of what you built. You had it all, man. A wife who adored you. A house. A steady job. People respected you. I was the screw-up. Always the one you had to save. So you took the one thing you thought would make us even. He nodded slowly. It's not an excuse. Just the truth. I didn't say anything. I didn't forgive him. But I didn't walk out either. That night, I sat in my motel room staring at the ceiling, wondering what it would mean if I was a match. If I gave him a piece of myself, quite literally, to save his life, would it make me noble? Or just foolish? Would it feel like closure? Or would I always wonder if I should have let him fade out with the weight of his choices still on him? And then somewhere between midnight and morning I remembered something. My dad. The man who vanished from our lives when Jason was still in diapers. The one I swore I'd never be like. Cold. Absent. Silent in the moments that mattered most. Maybe I wasn't here because Jason deserved saving. Maybe I was here because I needed to prove something to myself. I wasn't my father. I wasn't a ghost. The next day, the call came in. "You're a match," the doctor said. Just like that. Like I'd won the most ironic lottery in history. He asked if I wanted to proceed. And I said what I didn't expect to say. Let me talk to him first. When I got back to Jason's room, he was awake, barely. I sat down, leaned forward, and looked him straight in the eye. "They say I'm a match." He blinked slowly. "Are you gonna do it?" "I don't know yet." He nodded like he expected that. "But if I do," I continued, "it's not because you deserve it. It's not because we're brothers. And it's not because I forgive you." "Then why?" "Because I refuse to let what you did turn me into something I'm not." He stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time in years. And maybe he was. The morning of the surgery felt like the end of something. Not like the end of a chapter, more like the end of a war I didn't sign up for, but somehow found myself marching through, wounded and stubborn, still breathing. The nurse woke me early. Said they'd prep me soon. She asked if I had any questions. I did, but none that she could answer. "Do you ever really forgive someone? Can a scar carry peace? Why am I doing this?" Instead, I just nodded and thanked her. I didn't need answers right now. Just quiet. And maybe a warm blanket and some dumb magazine to pretend to read. Jason was already in pre-op. I saw him briefly through the curtain as they wheeled me past. He reached out a trembling hand again, and this time I took it. Not because I had to. Because I needed to know I could still choose who I was, even now. His eyes were full of something I didn't recognize. Not pride. Not regret. Just something human. Something small. Like a broken man finally seeing the pieces. "Mark," he rasped. "Thank you." I didn't answer. Just gave his hand the faintest squeeze before they rolled me away. The ore was bright, unnaturally so. Like they wanted to make sure no shadow could survive there. I laid back on the table, stared up at the white light, and for the first time in a long while, I let myself remember. Not the betrayal. Not the night I found out. But the ones before. The nights Jason and I used to camp in the backyard as kids, using sleeping bags that always smelled like dust and adventure. He used to ask me the big questions like why stars don't fall or if dogs knew they were loved. I always had answers even when I didn't. I was the big brother. I was supposed to know everything. And for a long time I thought I did. Until I didn't. I remember the first time Emma met him. She laughed at his dumb jokes. Said he was charming in a lost puppy kind of way. I didn't think much of it at the time. I trusted her. I trusted him. I didn't think betrayal was something that could walk around wearing my last name. But now here we were. And they were putting me under to carve a piece of my body out to try and save the man who took everything I thought I could trust. Before the lights faded, I remember one last thought that floated up like a balloon in my chest. Let this be the last time he ever takes something from me. The surgery went well. Or so they said. I woke up groggy, throat sore, belly burning with the dull throb of fresh stitches and old grief. Jason was alive. Stable. Resting. They gave me a room with a window. Small mercy. I spent the first day drifting in and out of consciousness, Duke's photo on my nightstand and the quiet hum of the 4 keeping time like a metronome. On day 2, they let me sit up. That's when the pain got loud. They don't tell you how much recovery hurts. It's not just the physical part, it's emotional whiplash. I kept thinking, I gave him a piece of my body. What else does he still hold? Emma called again. Left a voicemail. Said she heard the surgery went well. She sounded soft. Like a woman who used to be someone's everything and now knows she'll never be that again. I didn't call back. I didn't delete the message either. Jason's doctor came in the next morning and said he was awake. Asking for me. I didn't go. Not right away. It took me a full day to gather the will. To get out of bed, put my feet on the cold tile, and take those slow, miserable steps down the hallway. He was sitting up when I walked in. Pale, but breathing. Alive. When he saw me, he looked like he was about to cry. I didn't think you'd come, he said. I wasn't going to, I admitted. But you did, he whispered. Don't read into it. He chuckled weakly. Still the same old Mark. No, I said, pulling up a chair beside him. I'm not. That version of me died the same day I found out about you and her. Jason nodded, face folding into something like shame. She left me, you know? Said she couldn't look at me without remembering what we did to you. Good, I said flatly. We sat in silence for a while. Machines beeping. The air too heavy to feel clean. Do you hate me? He asked eventually. I thought about it. No, I said. But I'll never love you the same way again. That part's gone. He nodded like he'd expected it. I don't want your forgiveness, Mark. I want you to know I never stopped looking up to you. That one hit me in the ribs harder than the scalpel ever did. Because if that was true, it made it worse, not better. I'm not here to make peace, I said quietly. I'm here because I couldn't live with being the man who walked away while his brother died. He swallowed hard. I get it. You don't, I said. But maybe one day you will. I stood up then. The pain in my side flared like a reminder, nothing comes free. Not even mercy. I'll check in again, I said. But don't mistake that for anything more than what it is. And I left. As I walked back to my room, slower than I used to, I felt something shift. Not closure. Not healing. But a crack in the wall. And sometimes that's how light gets in. It was a Thursday when I was discharged from the hospital. They gave me a stack of papers, a cheap wheelchair ride to the car, and a half-hearted take it easy. No fanfare. No dramatic music. Just the hum of the parking lot and the quiet dread of going back to a life that didn't quite fit anymore. I didn't go straight home. I stopped by the river. There's this spot I like, small dock, little crooked bench, water that always looks like it knows secrets. Duke used to sit next to me there, sniffing the breeze like he was catching up with old friends. I sat there for a while. Let the wind do its thing. Let the silence try and convince me I was okay. Spoiler, I wasn't. I'd saved my brother's life. A man who, not that long ago, had laid waste to mine. And now he was recovering in a hospital bed, getting better. While I was limping home with stitches in my side and questions in my gut. I know everyone says forgiveness sets you free. But here's the thing they never talk about. Sometimes forgiveness just feels like you handed someone a rope and now you're waiting to see what they'll do with it. I got home late that afternoon. Duke greeted me like I'd only been gone an hour, tail wagging, eyes full of that uncomplicated loyalty only dogs seem to understand. I leaned into him harder than I meant to. No one else was waiting for me. No casseroles. No cards. No half-sorry messages from old friends who vanished when things got messy. Just me, Duke, and a house that felt quieter than it used to. I moved slow. Everything hurt. Showering was a circus act, bending down was off the table, and laughing? Forget it, felt like someone was trying to saw me in half. But what really ached was the part of me that expected to feel lighter. Like doing this good deed would somehow fix something inside me. Instead, I just felt hollow. Not broken, just unoccupied. Like someone had packed up and left. That night, I sat on the porch with a blanket over my lap, Duke at my feet, and a cup of tea I didn't really want. I stared out at the dark and thought about who I was before everything, before Emma, before Jason, before betrayal turned my blood cold. I didn't miss being that guy. He was naive. Too trusting. Thought family meant something you could count on. But I did miss the man who smiled more. The man who didn't double-check people's intentions before letting them close. A few days passed. Jason called. Twice. I let it ring both times. He left a message the second time. Said he understood if I didn't want to talk. That he'd started therapy. That he wasn't drinking anymore. Said he still had the drawing I gave him when we were kids, a dumb little cartoon of the two of us fighting dragons. He said he kept it all these years because it reminded him who he wanted to be. I didn't delete the message. I didn't return the call either. Instead, I picked up a pen and wrote him a letter. Not to forgive. Not to reconnect. But to say the things I couldn't say out loud. Jason, you're alive because I refuse to be like the men who hurt us. I did it because I needed to prove to myself that I'm still the man I was raised to be, not the one your actions tried to turn me into. This doesn't mean we're okay. It doesn't erase what happened. But it's a start. Not for you, for me. Don't mistake my silence for hatred. That would mean I'm still giving you space in my heart. You've already taken enough. I hope you do better with the second chance. I really do. But if you waste it, that's on you. Mark. I didn't sign it with love. I didn't need to. I dropped it in the mailbox the next morning, no return address. Just one man saying his piece so he could start rebuilding his. That day, I drove to the local hardware store. Bought lumber. Tools. A few things I didn't need, but they felt like progress. I was going to build something. Not for anyone else, just for me. A little workshop in the back. Maybe a bench. Maybe nothing at all. Just space. A clean slate. Wooden nails and time. Sometimes healing isn't about talking it out. Sometimes it's just about doing. Putting something back together when life tore too much apart. One screw at a time. It was a Tuesday. The kind of day that doesn't mean much to most folks, just background noise in the week. But for me, it was the first time in a long while that the silence in my house felt peaceful. Duke was snoring at the foot of the workshop I'd started building. The framework was up. Just a skeleton of what would become a place where my hands could remember how to make instead of mourn. I had a hammer in my grip, the kind of old, reliable weight that feels honest. My phone was off. My world was small. And I liked it that way. Until the knock on the front door. Now, I don't get many visitors. Most folks text or call. And anyone from my past, well, they usually know better than to show up unannounced. So I stood there on the porch, dust on my jeans, sweat on my brow, and every instinct telling me not to open that door. But I did. And there she was. Emma. She looked older, of course. Life does that. Her hair was shorter, more practical. She wore the kind of dress that said she hadn't planned this visit, just decided on it. That alone made me uneasy. "Hi, Mark," she said, soft. I didn't answer. Didn't invite her in either. "I know I shouldn't be here," she added quickly. But I didn't know how else to say it. "Say what?" I asked flat. She looked down at her hands. No rings. No pretense. "I'm sorry. For everything. I let that sit between us. Heavy. Useless. I'm not here to ask for anything," she said. "Not forgiveness. Not reconciliation. I needed to say it to your face." "Well," I said, crossing my arms. "You've said it." She flinched just a little. "Jason told me you saved his life." I didn't answer. That was more than I ever deserved. More than he did. Still, I said nothing. Because the truth was, I didn't know what words were safe anymore. "I wanted to tell you something," she said. "Something I never had the courage to say when you left." I raised an eyebrow. "And what's that? That it wasn't about love?" I blinked. "What I did," she continued. "It wasn't because I loved him. It wasn't even lust, not really. It was weakness. My own. I saw someone who made me feel wanted in a different way and I let it take me. I knew it would ruin everything. I just didn't care enough to stop it." That was the closest thing to honesty I'd ever heard from her. And it hurt worse than a lie. "You hurt me," I said quietly. "And you hurt us." "I know. And you didn't even try to fix it." "I didn't think I could." I shook my head. "You didn't want to. You chose comfort over courage. Every day. Every step." She nodded. "Took it. No defense. No tears. I don't expect your forgiveness, Mark," she said. "But I do hope you find something better than the life I gave you." I looked past her then. At the sun filtering through the pine trees in my yard. The wind was quiet. The air still. "I already have," I said. Emma's eyes welled up. Not dramatic. Just quiet grief. "Then I guess I should go." She turned, then hesitated. "You were a good man, Mark." I didn't see it until it was too late. I watched her leave. No goodbyes. Just the soft sound of her footsteps down the porch steps and the hollow click of her car door shutting. Duke wandered out from the workshop and looked up at me, tail wagging lazily, like he was asking, "We good?" I nodded. "Yeah, we were." Later that night, I sat on the edge of my bed with the envelope Emma had left behind, unopened, unrequested. I thought about burning it. Instead, I tossed it in a drawer. Not because I wanted to read it, but because some endings don't need fire. They just need to be put away. It arrived in the mail about a week after Emma showed up. Plain white envelope. No return address. Just my name in the handwriting I hadn't seen in over a decade, crooked, slanted like it was trying to apologize as it wrote. Jason. I sat there at the kitchen table, coffee cooling, Duke curled up nearby, and just stared at it. You'd think after everything, the phone calls, the hospital, the surgery, there wouldn't be anything left to say. Turns out there was. I opened it slowly. Not with shaking hands, I was past that. Just cautious. Like it might bite. Mark? If you're reading this, it means you haven't thrown it away yet. That alone tells me more than you think. I've tried to write this about 20 times. Always stopped somewhere between guilt and shame. So I'm just going to say it plain. I was broken long before I broke us. I spent years feeling like your shadow. Not because of anything you did, you were always the one pulling me out of ditches. You gave me a home, a job, a chance at dignity. And I repaid it by taking the one thing that mattered most to you. I won't lie to you, at the time I justified it. Told myself Emma was unhappy. That you didn't really see her. That maybe, just maybe, she saw something in me that made her feel alive. But looking back, I know what it really was. I was lonely. Pathetic. I saw something good and decided if I couldn't have it, I'd at least ruin it. I've been doing a lot of work since the transplant. Not just physically, though that part's no joke, but mentally. I finally said yes to therapy. Not because I thought it'd fix me, but because I needed to understand why I kept destroying things that were good to me. You didn't have to save me, Mark. You didn't owe me a thing. But you did it anyway. And every day I wake up now, every breath I take with this second chance, I know I'm living with something I didn't earn. A piece of you inside me. I won't pretend that makes us brothers again. I know that door's shut and probably for good. But I want you to know something. I carry what you gave me. Not just the surgery. The kindness. The choice you made. I carry it. And I'm going to spend whatever time I have left trying to deserve it. I won't call again. I won't show up. You gave me a gift. I won't take another thing from you. But if you ever want to talk about anything, I'll be here. Thank you. Jason. I read it once. Then again. Not because I didn't believe him, but because I wanted to feel something. And I did. Just not what I expected. I didn't feel rage. Or sorrow. Or even closure. I felt tired. Like a man who'd been walking with a stone in his shoe for so long, he forgot what normal felt like. I folded the letter up and placed it in the same drawer where Emma's envelope sat. Side by side. Like bookends. Later that day, I went back out to the workshop. Hammered a few more nails into the frame. Let the sound echo into the trees. Then I took a break. Sat on the unfinished porch. Watched Duke chase a butterfly like he had nothing but joy in his bones. That's when it hit me. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't angry anymore. Not healed. Not whole. But not angry. And sometimes that's enough. It came in the mail. Another envelope, this one thicker. A return address this time, Austin. A church I didn't recognize. At first, I thought maybe it was junk. One of those donation letters or small-town flyers looking for volunteers. But when I opened it, I found a formal printed card inside. Simple font. Off-white paper. Embossed edges. A celebration of life, Jason Lawson. I just stared at it. Not because I was surprised he'd died. He hadn't. At least, not yet. Inside the envelope was a letter. Not from Jason, from the church. It explained that Jason was hosting what they called a living wake. Something his therapist had apparently encouraged, a way to reckon with the past while he still had breath in his lungs. A place to tell the truth. To face people. To say goodbye the right way. He'd invited friends, a few folks from recovery, even some extended family I hadn't seen in 20 years. And somehow he invited me. In the bottom of the letter, scribbled by hand, were just 3 words. If you want. That's it. No guilt. No manipulation. Just an open door. I sat with it for 2 days. Let the invitation ride shotgun in my truck while I drove out to the hardware store. Let it sit next to my cereal bowl in the morning. Let it collect fingerprints on my workbench while Duke snored beside it. I didn't talk to anyone about it. Not because I didn't want advice, but because I already knew the answer. I was going. Not for him. For me. The church was small. Brick. A little worn around the edges like most places that still meant something. There were folding chairs. Cheap cookies. One of those little signs out front with letters that always fall off mid-quote. Come as you are, leave better. I stepped inside and was hit with that smell, like old wood and candle wax and maybe regret. Jason was near the front. He looked thinner, but more alive, weirdly. Clear eyes. Shaky hands. A man who'd been stripped down and started to rebuild one painful brick at a time. He saw me. Didn't make a scene. Just nodded. That was enough. The room filled up slowly. A couple old friends. A woman from his AA group. A former coworker. A cousin I hadn't seen since we were kids. They didn't know me. Not really. Not the version of me that carried years of silence like a second spine. The event wasn't flashy. A few stories. A few apologies. Jason stood up, shaky but honest, and talked about what he'd done. What he'd broken. Who he used to be. And then he talked about me. He saved my life, he said, voice trembling. Not because I deserved it. Not because we were close. But because he chose to be better than I ever was. You could have heard a pin drop. I broke something that day, he continued. Something sacred. And I've spent every moment since trying to find a way to make peace with that. Not to erase it, but to live in the shadow of it with honesty. And then looking right at me. Mark, I don't know what else I can say. But thank you. For being the man I couldn't be. I didn't cry. But my chest felt tight. Like something inside had shifted slightly off its axis. Afterward, there were handshakes. Nods. Small talk over cheap lemonade. Jason didn't come up to me again. He gave me space. It was only when I was getting ready to leave that he stepped outside to where I stood, hands in my pockets, watching the sun go down behind the chapel. You didn't have to come, he said quietly. I know. Thank you for doing it anyway. I nodded. You're not forgiven, I said. I don't even know if that's something I can give. But you're seen. And maybe that's something. He exhaled like that meant more than anything. I shook his hand. Firm. Not warm. But real. Then I left. Driving home, windows down, wind in my ears, Duke asleep in the back seat, I felt something settle. Not peace. Not yet. But the beginning of it. And that was enough. Life didn't change overnight. There wasn't some grand awakening. No choir of angels. No dramatic moment where I looked in the mirror and saw a whole new man staring back. It happened in inches. Quiet ones. The kind you don't notice until the day you realize your morning coffee doesn't come with a side of bitterness anymore. Or when you catch yourself laughing at a stupid joke Duke made by chasing his own tail into a lawn chair. It's strange what healing actually looks like. It's not linear. It's not loud. It's not always visible. It's when the letters in your drawer stop whispering. When you don't replay conversations that already happened 100 times in your head. When you stop needing answers to questions that don't serve you anymore. After the wake, I didn't see Jason again. He kept his promise, no more calls, no more appearances. But every couple months I'd get a postcard. Just a little note with a place he'd visited or a milestone in his recovery. Nothing dramatic. Just proof of life. And I never answered. Not out of malice. Just because I didn't need to. Some connections don't need to be reignited, they just need to be left in peace. Emma moved out of state. I heard she remarried eventually. I hope she found whatever it was she thought she didn't have with me. I hope she learned to sit still with her own emptiness before filling it with someone else's warmth. And me? I kept building. The workshop became more than just wood and nails. It became therapy. Ritual. Some people pray I sand cedar planks and lose track of time. I made a bench. A table. A toy chest I gave to the neighbor's kid. None of it for profit. Just for purpose. One night, I sat on the porch with Duke asleep at my feet and a notebook in my lap. No agenda. No story to finish. Just one question scribbled at the top of the page. What do I want now? That used to be a dangerous question. One I was scared to ask because all I could picture was what I lost. But now it felt like an open window. I want peace. Not the kind where nothing goes wrong that doesn't exist. I want the kind where when things do go wrong, I don't fall apart. I want presence. To stop living in the past, or the what-ifs, or the would-be-beens. To be here. With my hands in the dirt and the sun on my face and maybe a dog trying to steal my sandwich. And maybe one day, love. Not because I need someone to fix me. But because I've done the work. Because now if someone came along, I wouldn't be dragging ghosts into the room with me. I'd just be me. Older. Wiser. Scarred, but still standing. Still smiling sometimes. Still good.